Hello and good evening. Thank you once again for tuning in. First, I would like to thank the original author of this video. His name is Возрождение, Золотой Век, Омск. This translates into English as Revival, Golden Age of Omsk. Большое удовлетворение и уважение к вам. Надеюсь, я не оскорбил вас своим переводом. I apologize for any translation mistakes. Here is a map of Omsk in Russia. I stand to be educated, but Russians seem to use the term cultural layer when speaking about mud flood. They call this культурный слой, but in translation I will use mud flood. And if you're tuning in to my channel for the first time, I will provide a definition for new viewers who are confused about what mud flood is. Mud flood, an obscure event or events which happened in the past, leaving a uniformly distributed layer of soil or dirt over all habitable land. When and how it happened remains a mystery, but it is generally supposed to have happened around the 1840s and 1850s, or 1850s. Official history has neglected mention of a mud flood event, and yet widespread evidence of a mud flood is apparent in virtually every major city on Earth. Particular evidence of mud flood can be seen on partial ground level inundation of foundations of windows on old buildings. Okay, so once again, this is my attempt at making a translation of the Russian to English. I'm not a speaker of Russian, not at all. Please be gentle with your criticisms. The ideas presented are not originally mine, and most likely I have made at least a few translation errors. I know I have, so please keep that in mind. Okay, here we go. Really, how old is Omsk? Was it once buried? Does the ground level go deeper than what we see today? I've been looking at publications by independent researchers. Several years ago, few people were talking about mud flood. More recently, there is serious interest in the buildings of old cities. Recently, in Omsk, there has been lots of renovation and construction of roadways and buildings. This is in preparation of Omsk's 300-year anniversary. In particular, the Vrobil building was renovated. You are looking at it now. The Vrobil building is a museum. The museum exposition occupies two buildings. The first one is a former commercial building by architect Krachkov in 1914. That's when it was built. And the second one is former Governor General Palace, built on the left bank of the river by architect Wagner in 1859 to 1862. Supposedly, this building is 100 years old, but looking at the base of the building, we can see what is called a cultural layer, accumulated mud over time. If we suppose that a cultural layer accumulation can be calculated as a few millimeters per year, this does not come close to accounting for the deep layer of mud that can be seen on Vrobil, the museum foundation. This is not an abandoned building. It is constantly maintained, and there is heavy foot traffic. I would like to mention the work of Polish historians and professionals in the field of history and architecture. They discuss and question instances where adjacent buildings and cities can have varying levels of mud, and particularly in relation to underground foundational levels. What's the point of storing commercial goods underground, or building garages underground? And why do front doors and windows appear below ground level? History tells us that buildings in Omsk were built around the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Here is the Volochyevska 9 number 9 building. It's a brewery. Look at the first floor windows. They are underground. This is Krasny Put 6, or number 6, on Red Road. Today, it's the Ministry of Health of Omsk region. Even after reconstruction, notice the ground floor windows are still submerged in the ground. This is Krasny Put 19, or rather 19, Red Road. After reconstruction, the windows are still below the earth. Next, this is Gusarova 18, or number 18. This is a shining example. Reconstruction has not happened here yet. Next, this is Gusarov 27, or 27. Someone thought they could fool us with a can of paint, but we can still see bricked up foundation windows. This drama theater has strange proportions. The appearance is as if the building is pressed into the ground. This is especially evident in decades-old photography. You can compare the old photos with the new photos of the drama theater today. I draw your attention to the more normal-looking staircase of the main entrance, which was recently reconstructed. Next, this is the Internationalne 25, or International 25. This is the Zdania Yeparyi Diocese building. Again, notice the windows of the lower floor is smaller than the upper ones. The proportions are incorrect. Kosaryeva 103, the old masonry at the bottom, indicates openings. By the way, in this building, there is a floor which goes even deeper. There is an underground basement you can't see. Kosareva 117, or 117, is another example of buried bricked-up windows. Lenina 23, or 23 Lenin Street. Notice the difference in this photo and the older photo. There was no digging during reconstruction. Lenina 43, or Lenin 43. The lower floor shows more modest reconstruction efforts. Lenina Chekalov. This was a beautiful building seen in this historic photo. Compare this with a more recent photo where they knocked off the upper story and filled in the foundation windows. Kakoi urodlive dom. What an ugly house. It's found in the center of our city today. Rabinovich 115. There is reconstruction to modernize the dugout windows. This is to save daylight on the ground floor. No one asks questions. Tarsky 20, or 20. There exists a floor underneath. Tarsky 115, or 115. If the first floor windows had not been dug out, likely they would have been hidden. Chapayeva 111. This is a dental polyclinic building. The first floor is clearly below ground. Velikanova 3. The windows are at ground level. Clearly, an architect would not design it this way. Komisarovsky 19. Did someone build on top of the ground floor? Velikanova 4. This photo is taken at reconstruction. Notice the masonry and the windows. They have reburied the foundation windows after renovation. Velikanova 9. This is the consulate building for Kazakhstan. Ground floor windows are pinched off. Ploshchad Dzerzhinskava 1A. This building is waiting for reconstruction or demolition by an unknown amateur. Lyubinsky Prospect, or Lyubinsky Avenue. It's now reconstructed, but there are still visible signs on the surface of the first floors. They look like this, and it's similar to what you might find in Irkutsk, Tomsk, Novosibirsk, Tyumen, Chelyabinsk, Orenburg of Perm, Itagdale, and so forth. Further, and of course, near Moscow and St. Petersburg. What caused these buildings to be buried? Maybe it was some kind of disaster that led to this result. Complete death? Whatever happened, it was well over a century ago. It is strange when looking at these streets and such architectural masterpieces that the roads are not paved. and the people are poorly dressed. Lots of carts and mud. It seems that even the windows do not have glazing. Rather, the windows are missing. Everything looks dilapidated. People are not crowded. There is no vegetation, only earth. Vegetation appears more in later photos. We could not find photos of when these buildings were built. Looking at Lubinsky Prospect Avenue, all buildings appear already constructed. The whole town is built. There are many solid stone buildings. I've only found one building where there is something similar to scaffolding. This is in Moscow Rose in Omsk. It is not clear if this building is brand new construction or restoration. There is a feeling that the construction was conducted at various times nearby. Architectural masterpieces are mixed in with ordinary wooden houses. This information is not yet reconciled. The only explanation is that in some time between 1716 and the present time, something inexplicable happened that plunged the buildings underground. Some time passed and life returned to the city. They didn't even dig everything out. They just added new modified doorways. What happened for these 300 years in Omsk? Looking at modern textbooks on the history, there is no explanation or mention of destruction at the foundation of these cities. Looking at a book on Siberia's beginning, we get the following words. Soviet philologists translated this ancient Russian text on the edge of the Kalmyk steppe, and I translated this. Once again, the city has a collapse or crash and was destroyed about the self-steppe of the Kamysk. Soviet philologists translated this old Russian text as follows. On the edge of Kalmyk steppe there will be again a city, although in the text itself there are no Kalmuks and steppes in general. Literally, from the Old Russian language, this translates as follows. It is necessary to revive the city on the right bank of the river, next to the steps of the ancient buildings from stones laid on stones. Okay, now this is me talking. I think the point that is being said here is that these buildings are historically described as stones built on stones. Perhaps structures built on ruins. Okay, back to the script. And in 1716, the year, simply, restoration happens at a new point in time. The report on this says Petra Perov, which means our city is built much earlier and was sufficiently developed since. If we have a stone building like this now, like the Vrubil Museum, the builders had some shortcomings, or the builders succeeded in completing the work in a finite period of time. The first floor and foundation are not restored. They are just reinforced and thrust up as seen in the photo. It can be seen that there is a floor hiding underneath. At some point, someone put reinforced concrete here. It makes it appear that this is not the first floor. Did the builders create basements? Should we just believe it? Incidentally, according to laws regarding property, cultural heritage, monuments and archaeology are also remains of buildings and ancient cities. Partially or completely hidden in the earth could be traces of the existence of human beings and related such artifacts. Artifacts should be identified and categorized along with their date of discovery. Also considered should be their vast scientific value and circumstantial threats of destruction in the future. When carrying out land management and other works, the law should provide for the need for safety of any work that should be carried out and without preconception. Historical and cultural expertise should be used with the effort of protecting cultural heritage. For breaking the law, officials should be subject to criminal and legal responsibility. I wonder what existing authority in Omsk is discussing with all the recent discussion about mud flood and revealed historical distortions. There is still the discrepancy about official history as new historical facts keep appearing. There are new notions of alternative history, but what a history! Our true history and alternative timeline should be revealed very soon.